Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know how much we love to explore these fascinating topics that can really make a difference in our lives. So today we're tackling something that affects us all, building a resilient local economy. We're using urban independence, a guide to self-sufficiency in city living, as our roadmap, and we're focusing on Chapter 7, which is all about local economies and commerce.
It's a topic that's really gaining momentum.
It is, and for good reason. I mean, think about it. We hear all the time about global supply chain issues, climate change, the rising cost of, well, everything.
Right?
So wouldn't it be amazing if we could create systems right here in our own cities that can help us weather those storms and, make us less vulnerable to those global forces?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what Chapter 7.1, this intro to building a local economy, is all about. It's about recognizing that cities can be surprisingly independent.
Okay. So when we talk about cities becoming more self-sufficient, what does that actually look like? I mean, in real life?
Well, picture this. You walk out your door and head to your favorite local coffee shop.
Already sounds good.
Right. And you know that the beans they're using were roasted just a few blocks away by a small batch roaster who sources their beans directly from a cooperative of farmers.
Wow. So cutting out all those middlemen and all that transportation.
Exactly. And then maybe you swing by the farmer's market for some fresh produce grown just outside the city limits.
Okay. I'm seeing where you're going with this.
And for lunch, you grab a bite at a restaurant that prides itself on using locally sourced ingredients and maybe even has its own rooftop garden.
Wait, hold on. Rooftop gardens? That's a thing.
Oh, yeah. It's becoming more and more common. Cities are getting creative with urban farming. You see rooftop gardens, community gardens, even vertical farms popping up all over the place.
That's amazing. So it's not just about buying local, it's about producing local too.
Exactly. It's about creating a closed-loop system where resources are used and reused within the community, minimizing waste and maximizing efficiency.
I love that idea of a closed-loop system. But let's be real here. How much of a difference can I really make as an individual? I mean, I'm just one person in a city of millions.
That's a question a lot of people ask. And it's understandable. We can feel But the truth is, our individual choices do matter, especially when we're talking about building a local economy.
So you're saying that every time I choose to shop at a local bookstore, instead of ordering from a giant online retailer, or every time I opt for that farm-fresh produce at the farmer's market.
Exactly. You're casting a vote with your dollar. You're saying, I support this local business, I support this local farmer, I support this local economy.
And those votes add up. They send a signal to businesses and policymakers that there's a demand for local goods and services.
Exactly. And as that demand grows, the local economy becomes stronger, more resilient, and more able to provide for the needs of its residents.
So it's like a snowball effect.
I like that analogy. You start with a small snowball, and as it rolls down the hill, it picks up more and more snow until it becomes this unstoppable force.
Okay, I'm convinced. I'm ready to start rolling my snowball. What are some concrete steps I can take to get more involved in my local economy?
Well, first off, I'd say become more aware of the businesses and organizations that are already doing great work in your community. Do some research, check out websites, local newspapers, community bulletin boards.
Okay.
See who's out there, who's producing local goods, who's offering sustainable services.
Got it. Be more mindful of where I'm spending my money.
Exactly. And then once you've identified those businesses, make a conscious effort to support them.
Okay. But what about cost? I mean, let's be honest, sometimes local can be more expensive.
That's true, sometimes,
Yeah.
but not always. And even when it is a bit more expensive, I think it's important to consider the value you're getting. You're not just buying a product or service.
Right.
You're investing in your community.
Yeah.
You're supporting local jobs. You're reducing your environmental impact.
So it's a bigger picture kind of thing.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think that's a shift in mindset that's really important. We've become so accustomed to thinking about price as the bottom line.
Yeah. I'm definitely guilty of that.
But when we start to factor in those other benefits, the social, the environmental, the economic benefits, suddenly that price tag doesn't seem quite so daunting.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And you know what else I've realized? It's not always about spending more money. It's about being more intentional with the money I'm already spending.
Exactly. Maybe instead of buying that mass-produced sweater, you check out the local vintage clothing store or the artisan market.
Right.
Or maybe instead of grabbing takeout from a chain restaurant,
Yeah.
you make an effort to cook at home using ingredients from the farmer's market.
So it's about making those small shifts in our daily routines that can have a big impact over time.
Exactly. It's about those little ripples that spread out and create waves of change.
I love that metaphor. It's like we're all dropping pebbles into this pond, and those ripples are intersecting and creating this beautiful pattern of interconnectedness.
And that's the beauty of a local economy. It's not just about transactions, it's about relationships. It's about community. It's about creating a system that's built on collaboration and shared values.
I'm feeling inspired. I'm ready to start making some ripples. What about you?
Me too. And you know what I'm really excited about? We're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah.
There's so much more to explore when it comes to building a resilient local economy.
Well, then let's dive in. We've got a whole chapter ahead of us filled with fascinating insights and practical tips. So let's turn the page and see what other treasures we can uncover.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so chapter 7.2 is all about local food networks, which we've already touched on a bit. But I want to go deeper here because I think a lot of people might be wondering why this is such a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, it's nice to support local farmers and all, but does it really make that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things?
It absolutely does. And to understand why we need to zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture of our food system.
Okay, I'm ready to zoom.
So right now, our food system is largely based on this globalized model. Meaning our food travels thousands of miles, often across continents, from the farm to our plates.
And that's a problem because...
Well, for starters, it's incredibly energy intensive. All those trucks, ships, and planes burning fossil fuels and contributing to climate change.
Right, not to mention all the packaging and processing that's involved.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of food waste. All that food that gets lost or spoiled in transit.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
But perhaps the biggest problem with this globalized food system is that it's incredibly vulnerable to disruptions.
Disruptions? Like what?
Well, think about it. We've already seen this happen with the pandemic.
True.
Suddenly, borders were closing, transportation was disrupted, and grocery store shelves were bare.
Yeah, that was a wake-up call for a lot of people.
It was, and it highlighted just how fragile our food system really is. We've become so reliant on these long, complex supply chains that any disruption can have a ripple effect throughout the entire system.
It's like a house of cards.
Yeah.
Just one wrong move and the whole thing comes tumbling down.
Exactly. And that's why local food networks are so important. They provide a buffer against those disruptions. They shorten the distance between the producer and the consumer.
Right.
And they create a more resilient and adaptable system that's less reliant on those global forces.
So it's like having a backup generator for a food supply.
Exactly. It's about diversifying our sources so that we're not putting all our eggs in one basket.
Okay. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back down to the individual level again. How can I actually get involved in my local food network?
Well, we've already talked about farmers markets, which are a fantastic way to connect directly with local farmers.
And those are popping up everywhere these days.
They are, and they offer such a vibrant experience. You can chat with the farmers, learn about their growing practices, sample different varieties of produce.
It's like a community gathering.
It is, and it's a great way to support local agriculture.
Well,
there are also community gardens, which are a great option if you don't have your own space to grow food.
Right. You can rent a plot of land and grow your own vegetables, herbs, flowers.
And it's a wonderful way to connect with your neighbors and build community.
Okay, that's definitely on my list to check out. But what if I don't have a green thumb?
Well, there's still plenty of ways to get involved. You can join a CSA, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture.
Okay, I've heard of CSAs, but I'm not really sure how they work.
Basically, you buy a share of a farm's harvest up front.
So you're like investing in the farm.
Exactly. And in return, you receive a weekly box of fresh seasonal produce throughout the growing season.
So you're getting a direct connection to the source of your food.
You are. And you're helping to support a local farmer.
Sounds like a win-win situation.
It is. And there are even CSAs that specialize in different types of food, like meat, dairy, eggs, even bread.
Wow. So there's really something for everyone.
There is. And it's a great way to explore new foods and expand your culinary horizons.
Okay. I'm sold on CSAs. What else should I know about local food networks?
Well, another option is food co-ops, which are member-owned grocery stores that prioritize local and sustainably sourced products.
I've heard of food co-ops, but I've never actually been to one.
They're becoming increasingly popular, and they offer a great alternative to conventional supermarkets.
What makes them so different?
Well, for starters, they're owned and operated by the people who shop there.
So it's like a community-owned grocery store.
Exactly. And because they're not driven by profit maximization, they can prioritize things like fair prices for farmers, ethical sourcing practices, and community involvement.
That's amazing. So it's like a grocery store with a conscience.
I like that. And they often carry a wider variety of local and organic products than you would find at a typical supermarket.
Okay, I'm definitely going to check out my local food co-op.
I think you'll be impressed. And the great thing is that by supporting these local food initiatives, you're not just getting delicious fresh food,
Right.
you're also contributing to a more sustainable and resilient food system.
And that's something we can all feel good about.
Absolutely. It's about making choices that nourish our bodies, our communities, and our planet.
Well said. Now, speaking of choices, let's talk about Chapter 7.3, which is all about sustainable business practices. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I think it's so important for businesses to operate in a way that's both profitable and responsible.
Absolutely. It's about finding that sweet spot where economic success goes hand in hand with environmental stewardship and social equity.
Exactly.
Huh?
So what are some of the key principles of sustainable business practices that really resonated with you in this chapter?
Well, one that stood out to me is the idea of transparency,
Meaning?
meaning businesses being upfront and honest about their supply chains, their manufacturing processes, their environmental impact.
So no more hiding behind vague labels or greenwashing campaigns.
Exactly. Consumers are becoming increasingly savvy, and they want to know the story behind the products they're buying.
Right. They want to know where their clothes were made, how their food was grown, what impact their purchases are having on the world.
And businesses are starting to realize that transparency is not just the right thing to do, it's also good for business. Well, for starters, it builds trust with consumers.
Makes sense.
When people feel like they know and understand a company's values, they're more likely to support that company.
Right. It's about building those relationships again.
Exactly. And transparency also helps businesses identify areas where they can improve their sustainability practices.
So it's like a self-assessment tool.
It is. By tracking and measuring their environmental impact, businesses can pinpoint areas where they can reduce waste, conserve energy, and minimize their footprint.
So it's not just about doing good. It's about doing well by doing good.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about this movement towards sustainable business. It's not just a niche market anymore. It's becoming mainstream.
I love that more and more businesses are realizing that sustainability is not just a feel-good initiative. It's a smart business strategy.
Absolutely. It's about creating long-term value, not just short-term profits.
And it's about recognizing that businesses have a responsibility not just to their shareholders, but to their employees, their communities, and the planet.
It's about the triple bottom line: people, planet, profit.
Exactly. So what are some practical steps that businesses can take to become more sustainable?
Well, there are so many possibilities. It really depends on the specific industry and the company's goals. But some common strategies include reducing energy consumption by investing in energy-efficient appliances and renewable energy sources, minimizing waste by implementing recycling and composting programs and reducing packaging, sourcing materials responsibly by choosing suppliers who adhere to ethical and sustainable practices, and engaging employees in sustainability initiatives.
Well, that's a good one. Create a culture of sustainability within the workplace.
Exactly. It's about empowering employees to be part of the solution.
So it's not just about top-down mandates. It's about creating a bottom-up movement.
It is. And it's about recognizing that sustainability is an ongoing journey, not a destination.
It's about continuous improvement.
Exactly. It's about constantly striving to do better, to be more responsible, to make a positive impact on the world.
I love that. And you know what else I think is so important about sustainable business practices? They can inspire other businesses to follow suit.
Absolutely. It's like a ripple effect. One company starts making changes, and then others see the benefits and start to do the same.
It's contagious.
It is. And it creates a virtuous cycle where businesses are competing not just on price, but on their sustainability credentials.
So it's like a race to the top.
Exactly. And the more businesses that join the race, the faster we'll move towards a more sustainable future.
I love that vision. A world where businesses are leading the charge towards a healthier planet.
It's a vision worth striving for. And it's a vision that's becoming more and more attainable every day.
I agree. So let's keep talking about these attainable solutions because I think that's what's so empowering about this conversation. It's not just about doom and gloom. It's about hope and possibility.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we have the power to create the kind of world we want to live in.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about this whole movement towards urban self-sufficiency. It's not just about survival. It's about thriving. It's about creating a future where our cities are not just places we live, but vibrant ecosystems that nourish us, support us, and inspire us.
I love that. And you know what else is so inspiring about this? It's not just a top-down movement. It's happening at the grassroots level.
You're right.
Yeah.
People are taking matters into their own hands. They're starting their own businesses. They're growing their own food. They're building community.
And that's what gives me hope. It's that collective energy, that shared commitment to creating a better future.
And it's contagious, right? That energy spreads and inspires others to get involved.
It does. And that's how we create real change.
So what's the next step in our journey?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, but there's still so much more to explore. We've talked about the importance of local food networks and sustainable business practices, but we haven't even touched on things like renewable energy transportation and alternative currencies.
So many possibilities.
There are, and I think that's what makes this topic so fascinating. It's constantly evolving. There are always new ideas emerging, new solutions being developed.
So it's an ongoing conversation.
It is, and it's
Yeah.
a conversation that I'm so glad we're having.
Me too. I'm excited to see where this journey takes us.
Me too. Let's keep exploring.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, but
We have.
I want to make sure our listeners are leaving with some concrete takeaways, some actionable steps they can take to start building a more resilient local economy in their own communities. So what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who's feeling inspired, but maybe a little overwhelmed by all the information?
I would say start small. Don't try to do everything at once. Just pick one thing that resonates with you and focus on that.
Okay, for example.
Maybe you decide to commit to buying all your produce from the farmer's market for the next month.
Okay.
Or maybe you challenge yourself to try one new local restaurant each week.
Right?
Or maybe you sign up for a CSA.
Great ideas.
The point is to just start somewhere, take that first step, and then build from there.
And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about progress.
Exactly. It's about making those small shifts in our daily routines that can have a big impact over time.
And don't be afraid to share your journey with others.
Yes. Talk to your friends, your family, your neighbors about the importance of supporting local businesses and building a more resilient community.
The more we talk about these issues, the more awareness we raise and the more momentum we create.
Exactly. It's about creating a ripple effect.
I love that. And you know what else I think is really important?
What's that?
Have fun with it. Don't make it feel like a chore.
Oh, absolutely.
Explore your city. Discover new businesses. Try new foods. Connect with your community.
It's about making it an enjoyable experience.
Exactly. And that's what will keep you engaged and motivated in the long run.
I agree. When we approach this with a sense of curiosity and excitement, it becomes so much more than just a task. It becomes a way of life.
And that's what we're all about here. Creating a life that's meaningful, sustainable, and fulfilling.
Absolutely well said.
So to wrap up this part of our deep dive, I just want to say thank you for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
And remember, we're just getting started. There's so much more to explore. So stay tuned for our next installment where we'll be diving even deeper into the world of local economies.
I can't wait. It's amazing how these seemingly small choices can add up.
They really do. You know, it's funny. I used to think of voting with your dollar as this abstract concept. But now I see it in action every time I choose that locally roasted coffee or that handmade soap from the farmer's market.
Exactly. It's about putting your money where your values are.
Absolutely. And speaking of values, let's circle back to that idea of urban self-sufficiency from Chapter 7.1.
Yeah.
It's not just about supporting existing local initiatives.
Right.
It's about becoming active participants ourselves.
Absolutely. It's about taking ownership of our own needs and finding creative ways to meet them within our own communities.
So like starting our own gardens. I've always wanted to try growing my own herbs. But I live in a tiny apartment with barely any sunlight. Is it even possible to garden in an urban environment like mine?
Absolutely. Urban gardening has exploded in recent years. People are getting so creative with it.
Right.
You see rooftop gardens, balcony gardens, community gardens, vertical farms, even indoor gardens using hydroponics.
Wow, hydroponics. That sounds pretty high tech.
It can be, but there are also simple hydroponic systems you can set up at home.
Maybe I'd need to do some research on that.
I think you'd be surprised how easy it is to get started.
Okay, you've convinced me. I'm going to give it a try. But let's say I want to take it a step further. What if I have a business idea that aligns with these principles of sustainability and local empowerment?
I love that. Well, Chapter 7.3 has some great insights on sustainable business practices.
Okay, so what's the key takeaway here?
It's all about integrating those values into your business model from the very beginning.
So instead of just chasing profits, it's about making choices that benefit both the community and the environment in the long run.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that businesses can be a force for good.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
But let's be real. It's not always easy to balance those competing priorities, especially when you're first starting out.
That's true. There will always be challenges. But I think the key is to stay focused on your mission and to surround yourself with people who share your values.
So find your tribe.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask for help. There are so many resources available to support entrepreneurs who are committed to sustainability.
Like what?
Well, there are mentorship programs, business incubators, funding opportunities, even networking events specifically for green businesses.
That's amazing. So there's a whole ecosystem out there to support these kinds of events.
There is, and it's growing all the time.
I'm so encouraged to hear that. So let's bring this back to our listener. They've learned about CSAs, farmers markets, co-ops, even starting their own businesses or gardens. What's one small step they can take today to become more engaged in their local economy?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing is to simply start paying attention. Become aware of the businesses in your community. Ask yourself, where does my food come from? Who made my clothes? What impact are my choices having on the environment and the people around me?
So it's about mindfulness.
Exactly. Once you start asking those questions, you'll naturally start making more conscious decisions.
It's like that saying, we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children.
I love that.
Building a resilient local economy isn't just about us. It's about creating a better future for generations to come.
Beautifully put. And remember, this isn't just about survival, it's about thriving. When we invest in our local communities, we create a ripple effect that benefits everyone.
You know, after diving into all this information, I'm feeling incredibly hopeful. It's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom of global challenges, but this conversation has reminded me of the power we have to create positive change right here at home.
I agree. There's a real sense of empowerment that comes from knowing you're not just a passive consumer, but an active participant in shaping your community and your world.
And that's what's so exciting about this movement toward urban self-sufficiency. It's not just about practicality, it's about reclaiming our connection to the things that truly matter. Community, sustainability, and a sense of shared purpose. So as we wrap up our deep dive into local economies, I want to leave our listener with this question. What if our cities were truly self-sufficient? What would that look like? What role could you play in making that happen?
It really is the question, isn't it? It's easy to get caught up in these big ideas.
Right.
But like we were talking about, real change starts with those small, everyday choices.
Okay, so what are some things our listeners can try? What would you suggest?
So we've talked about checking out CSAs and farmers markets.
Yep.
Maybe this week you try a new recipe featuring seasonal local produce. Or you could even try making a point of going to a local business instead of that big chain store.
Those are great starting points.
Yeah.
And, you know, something as simple as just chatting with the people at your farmer's market can make a difference.
I agree.
You know, building those connections, learning about the people and processes behind the things we're buying.
Exactly. It's about transforming the experience, you know, from just a transaction into an actual relationship.
Absolutely. And those relationships are really the foundation of a strong local economy.
For sure.
And for those who are feeling super ambitious, maybe this is the week you finally start that herb garden.
Yes.
On your balcony. Or you can check out those local business resources we mentioned.
So many possibilities.
There are. And remember, it's not about being perfect or doing everything at once. It's about taking those small steps one at a time and building momentum along the way.
I think that's such an important point. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the challenges we're facing.
It is.
But like we've seen, even the smallest actions can have an impact.
It really can. And when we all do our part together, that's where the real magic happens.
I couldn't agree more.
This whole idea of urban self-sufficiency, it's not just about practicality. It's about taking back our power, you know, our connection to our communities and our ability to shape the world around us.
It's about creating a future where our cities are more than just places we live in.
Right.
They become these vibrant ecosystems that nourish and support us.
What a beautiful vision. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling super energized and ready to take action.
Me too. I hope our listeners are feeling the same.
I think they are. And remember, we're all in this together. Every choice we make, every connection we forge, every seed we plant it, all helps build a more resilient future for everyone.
It really does. And it's a future worth fighting for.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into local economies. We hope you've learned some new things and are leaving feeling empowered to make a difference in your community.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep those local connections strong and stay curious. We'll catch you on our next deep dive into another fascinating topic.